Hi everyone, it's me, Arielle, and it's Wednesday Warriors. And this week we have a brand new topic, which is what has been the significant piece or a significant piece of your eating disorder or development of one, and how have you used that information to overcome it? And that's a pretty interesting topic because we're all going to have very different answers on this collaboration. And my specific answer, it took me a little while to think of which piece I wanted to share with you guys because, as with anyone, I think the development of an eating disorder basically is comprised of many, many things. I know that my anorexia, when I developed it came from so many different things. Parts of it had to do with my family, parts of it had to do with my mental state, parts of it had to do with my perfectionism, parts of it had to do with transition, parts of it had to do with body image, parts of it had to do with eating habits. There's so many pieces, but one of the things that I think played at least a part in my development of my eating disorder was bullying. And I know I've talked about this before on my own personal channel in different videos here and there, but to make a long story short, when I was in middle school, I was basically shunned by a bunch of friends, and my life was miserable, and it got to the point where everyone was ganging up on me, and I didn't have anyone. I had no friends. To be more accurate, I ended up eventually only having one friend, and it was just terrible because it wasn't just that I was ignored, it was that when I was paid attention to, it was, there were hateful comments and notes, and it was just, my life was just, it was so terrible, and I was only 11, and it was just a really hard time for me because it was a detrimental time in my development, and, I was going through puberty and all that good stuff. And I would come home crying every single day. My mother would try to console me and tell me that they were jealous and, give me reasons for why people were doing what they were doing. But that didn't even matter to me. I couldn't really fathom what the reason could be except that there was something wrong with me. And it changed me into a different sort of person. I used to be really outgoing and really friendly and social and, like one of those little girls that wants to be an actress. And when this happened, it just changed me, and I became very quiet and reserved and shy, and I basically, lost some of my spirit. And after a year of being bullied and shunned, everyone just decided to stop treating me that way, as quickly as they had started treating me that way. So, I never really got any real explanations or anything, and, I can forgive and forget, so it wasn't even that I was holding a grudge, it was just that I had become a completely different person, and I had vowed to myself that I was never going to do anything or say anything again that would make people treat me that way. So I just became a very reserved, quiet, scared person, and it affected me a lot. And it was around that time that my strange eating habits developed, and I was always a very, very skinny girl, and I became a vegetarian for no good reason, but I wasn't the kind of vegetarian that substitutes proteins and things like that. I basically just cut things out, and if my family was having chicken and a baked potato and green beans for dinner, I would just have the baked potato and green beans for dinner. So my eating habits definitely showed signs of an eating disorder even when I was that young, and it created a really big change in me. And the strange thing, the reason I'm bringing this up as my example for the topic this week, is that I didn't fully realize how much that this incident, when I was in middle school, impacted me until I was maybe 18 or 19 years old and I was in therapy. And I don't know how it came up, but we ended up talking about it, and so many things always came back to me trying to please other people and wanting to be liked, And, this whole story came out, and there's so much more to the story from middle school than I'm going to be able to tell you in a video. But, I basically just it felt like something clicked, and I realized this really impacted me in a big way. Not only did it impact me in my development as I was growing up and being 11 years old, but it sort of triggered strange habits within my mental health and my eating and the way that I saw myself and the way that I wanted to please other people and never make a wrong move. And I was already a perfectionist, which, is some sort of weird prerequisite for having an eating disorder. But, this certainly didn't help. And my therapist at that point, several years ago, had told me that I should write a letter to the girls that did this to me, because I had never really said anything to them. After it was all over and done with, I just kind of resumed my life the way it was, and they resumed their lives the way theirs were. And with some of them, I became friends again, and I just sort of pretended it hadn't happened the same way they did, because I was just so grateful to not be shunned and alone. But it had affected me so much, so I was forever changed. So my therapist said I should write them a letter. So, years and years and years later, when I was, I think, around 19, I sat there one night and I wrote this letter that I called Dear Girls. And, it was this 2-page, basically, journal entry where I said everything that I've always wanted to say, and basically got out my anger and my frustration and my sadness, and said things that, I've kept inside. And it really helped, because it helped me realize a lot of things that I had never really put 2 and 2 together. So that kind of just made me feel more validated, and it helped me in that way. But I do really want to be clear that I don't blame these girls for anything. I don't blame them for my eating disorder. I don't think that they gave me an eating disorder or made me, develop an eating disorder or anything like that. I think that the incident played a part in my development of an eating disorder, but it wasn't only that one thing. I do believe that it's a mental illness. People are, predisposed to develop sorts of things like that. And, I had many other issues, like with my father and with, perfectionism and just lots of different things that I won't get into in this video. But, it wasn't them, and I certainly wouldn't want to be held accountable for something that I did when I was 11 years old for the rest of my life. I mean, I'm not going to blame a bunch of kids in middle school for something that happened to me. This is my life, and this is what happened, and, I don't blame my father for anything that he's done either. So that said, I did write that letter, and it did make a lot of things very clear to me, and it made me realize that you can't predict what people are going to do or say, and you can be the most wonderful, cautious, quiet, accommodating, submissive person there is, and still you won't be able to control what other people think or say or do. I mean, you can just be the most likable person that there is and do everything to please everyone around you, but you're never going to be able to control other people. It's just not going to happen. And it took me a long time to realize this. I still have a little trouble with it sometimes. I definitely have a people-pleasing nature, but I'm so much better than I used to be, and I've definitely learned some lessons here and there. And that was one of the things that helped me, was realizing sort of what had happened to me when I was a kid, and understanding that since I was in that stage of developing and growing up, that it had stuck with me in a way that it wouldn't have if I was 18 when it happened, or if I was an adult. So that's my little story. If you want to know my full story, I actually just completed a 4-video series on my story of an eating disorder, because I've had my blog for years, and it's pretty much just self-help and advice and going off my own experiences, but I don't really talk about what I went through or my own personal story. As far as I'm concerned, my eating disorder is a part of my past. It's not a part of my present, and it's certainly not going to be a part of my future. But I do get asked a lot, what's your story? So I had, in response, I had made 4 different videos on YouTube called my memoir files, and basically just starts from the beginning. So if you are interested in, the full story that I can't fit into 10 minutes, you can check out those videos. I'll post the links to those in the info box. I'll also post you links up there in the corner. And I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I will see you next time.